Great, they do it automatically.
It's okay, dude.
Stream, come on, stream. All right, I think we got it. All right, let's go, Matt.
Hello. Welcome to Sterling's Culture Club, where friends come together to improve themselves and the culture around us. So right now it's a pretty tough time, as many people might know. There are a lot of people who are scared, who are afraid of what's going on in the world. Maybe they don't know how they fit into society and the world today. This really shouldn't be the case. Here at Sterling's Culture Club, we read books to try to fight these problems. We read books to gain knowledge. We read books to be happy and to be successful. We read books to learn what it means to exist in this world and to help others understand what it means to be happy, successful, exist in this world as well. While our goal is to read these books and to help others, we ask one simple question, one simple request from you, the audience. Please pick up a book, join the club, and help us make this a better world. My name is Matt. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be talking to you guys. Thomas.
It's great to be here, Matt. Cedric, it's good to see you both again. I'm excited to hop into.
Always, Tom.
I'm happy to hop into part 3 tonight of Zen and the Martial Arts here. It's been quite the ride already. I mean, it's a 2-hour read, but I mean, we've already produced 4 hours of content on it. As far as I can tell, this is part 3 of 4. So we've definitely had some very in detail conversations, and I'm sure tonight will be another fantastic, nuanced debate and interrogation of ideas and the applications of Zen and the martial arts to the everyday life.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty crazy, Tom, because we thought this is only, we're listening to our book, a little 2-part show. We're going to talk, and that's going to be it. But you know what? That's really not enough time. I honestly, Tom, don't think that we put in enough time to truly discuss all this information that's in this book. Like, we keep having to cut ourselves off just to fit in this time frame. So that's pretty incredible. There's a lot to learn, man. There's a lot to learn. Cedric, what do you think, man? What do you think of this book so far?
So far, I would say there's so many great insights. I mean, we could really just go off on tangents, probably week-long tangents. When we talk about, Tom was saying 4 hours of content so far, going for 6, 8, whatever we end up getting, we could probably unpack this for like 50. We could just sit down and really talk about each individual chapter, take a week and just reflect on it. And there's plenty of value, I think, in that. But yeah, there's just so much, even in such a short book. I mean, there's some books where it's so long, but really they say so little. It's just, just kind of rehashing the same story or trying to, reaffirm the points they already made.
So what do you think of those books that are just so long? Say you got a 400-page book, and yet you can really only gain one idea from that book. I mean, what would be someone's motivation to write a book that long? But to only really argue one thing.
I would say it's just all about what your goal is. Because for me, a book like this, you'll still only walk away with so much, because there's so much there, unless you kind of do what we're doing. I'm really just sit there and reflect on one piece for so long. But in a book that maybe only covering 6, 7, 8, very distinct points over a couple hundred pages, then they're just keep rehashing, reaffirming everything that you're thinking, and just it sticks in your brain better. So it's like leaving the book, you get all 8 points, whereas there's 20 some odd chapters, right, or 15 or
with this one. It depends on. I mean, unfortunately, like I said, I don't have the physical book in front of me, which makes it difficult to write down some of the names and some of the content that he's talking about. But yeah, in Audible, it's something like 28 chapters, right? But it's all like 5 minutes long. They're super short. So what does that say that we're able to talk for 30 minutes to an hour about one chapter that's only 5 minutes long?
Oh yeah. So it's like, even after, like, if we did just say do it in a go, just 2.5 hours. I mean, that's what I did first time. It's like you don't really remember very much. Yeah, it's like you got your points, the thing, but it's very much like They're just banging them out really quick, and so it's
Yeah.
like, and each one kind of is its own standalone idea. So I don't know. I think there's value in both, but it's just all about what your goal is. This is a really good, dense book, though. It's like the steak of books.
This Zen and the Martial Arts, you mean?
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, there's something to be said for a book that seemingly has so little content, and yet you can expand on it a lot. I'd prefer to look for that book. Because, I mean, ultimately, and one of the things they talked about in this, if you remember, I believe it was I think it was our last one, our part 2, where there was a chapter, Do Not Disturb. That might have been the end of part 1. I don't remember. But, the main thing he said, it's spending time versus wasting time.
Yeah.
Right? And the thing that's most valuable to all of us is our time. Right? So what matters or should matter to everyone is how you spend your time versus how you spend your time. You don't want to waste your time, because the thing is, once it's gone, it doesn't come back. Right? I mean, that's more valuable than any money. It's more valuable than any goods, any materialistic things, especially. Time is what we all have in common, man. And once it's gone, it doesn't come back. So, book like this, it's short, got a lot of information in it. I'm happy to be reading it, man. I'm happy there's so much in it. I'm happy we can have such a good conversation about it. And I'm happy that we can discuss this with everyone else. Everyone else who's listening can hopefully gain something from it. So,
Absolutely.
Cedric, anything about the like button? Anything our audience should maybe do about our like button?
You guys forgot again, all right? You forgot again. You have to subscribe to that like button and the subscribe button, all right? You just click, and stay clicking, always. Comment,
That's right.
like, subscribe, all right? Soon we'll have a Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Soon we're going to be on every social media, if we aren't already right now. Potentially links down below. Maybe.
Possibly, maybe.
Eventually.
Little
Yes.
Easter egg. Weird.
Boom.
Weird.
So subscribe to the like button, get all the social medias, and just basically what you do is you have friends. You have 2,000 subscribers, or no, you have 2,000 followers. Boom. Send all of them messages to go watch our videos. And if 1,000 of you do it, and you have 1,000, then we'll reach 1 million people.
That's right. But it's not for us.
It's
right?
for you.
The most important thing. Okay, look. Our main goal. We see a toxic culture. We see people are sad, anxious, stressed out. It's tough, man. It's really tough to watch, and it's even tougher when you're in that state yourself. The reason why it's tough to watch is because we've been in that state. Maybe we still are. No one's perfect. Everyone teeters. It happens. But if you share this with anyone who you care about, if you really care about making this a better world, say whatever you want to accomplish in the world, if it's beneficial, it all starts with one person sharing that idea with other people. Right? That's how it's done. So if you really want to make a difference, man, that's how it's done. That's what I think.
Yep.
All right. You guys ready to get into this book?
Let's jump into it, Matt.
Okay. So, the first chapter we're going to go through today, it's called Recognize a True Threat. This one's pretty interesting, man. It's pretty good for anyone who might be a little shy, maybe at work. Someone who maybe is a little afraid to speak up for themselves, or maybe they think they get bullied. This is very important. So let's preface this a little bit. So Joe Hyams, who's the author of this book, he mentions before he went through martial arts that, he had a misrepresented understanding of what strength is, of how to, I guess, show strength. When some people think of strength and strong people, maybe they think of, say, a used car salesman, or say someone who's working in a white collar job, or say a boss who's kind of controlling you and telling you what to do. Mostly in a negative sense. Mostly someone who kind of browbeats and kind of gets their way. Very aggressive. Very, asserts themselves. Not in a good way. Well, Joe said that when he was dealing with these people, he would always tense up, and he would usually fail in his interaction. Right? He would kind of back up, or he would meet them with a force of his own, and just never turned out well. So he said one day he was working with Bruce Lee, and Bruce kind of noticed there was an issue. He drew a circle of chalk around Joe, and he said, "Okay, Joe, stand in the middle." Joe said, "Okay." Bruce got in a stance. He was outside the circle, a few feet from the circle, and he got in a stance. And Joe said he tensed up. Bruce said, "Joe, what are you doing? What are you tensing? There's no way I could possibly hit you from here. I can't hurt you. You don't need to tense up." And Joe said, "Okay, yeah, sure." Then Bruce moved up to the edge of the circle, and he kind of got in his stance again. And Joe tensed up again, and Bruce said, "Joe, you don't have to worry, man. I'm at the edge. I still can't possibly hurt you. I'm far enough away from you. Just relax, man. It's okay." Then Bruce stood in his circle, and he was just a few feet away from him. At that point, Joe stepped back, and Bruce said, "Good." He said, "Good. Now you're learning." He said, "Look," he said, "if someone's standing at the edge of your circle, can they hurt you?" And Joe said, "No, they cannot." He said, "That's the thing." He said, "If someone's standing at the edge of your circle, or say you want to call it your comfort zone, they can't hurt you. But if they get inside your circle and they corner you, right, they're not giving you a chance to escape. That's when you start fighting. That's when you start putting up, however that may be." I think we still agree that Aikido might be that whole kind of redirecting for a beneficial outcome. I still think that's the way maybe to do things, but each situation calls for different reaction. And yeah, I mean that's just so powerful, man. I mean you take that and you say put that into a work situation. So your boss is browbeating you, saying, "Hey, what are you doing? I needed these papers done an hour ago." And they just kind of getting on you, berating you. What you could do is you could shy away. You could kind of be afraid and say, "Okay, I'm so sorry, I'll do it." Or you just say, "All right, yeah, we'll get them done. I'm gonna get them done." And then the thing is if you don't, because these people who are, who might be berating you, who might be instigating a fight, say, they're just looking for fuel to their fire. They just want to fight back. That's what fuels them to keep fighting you, to keep berating you. So if you don't give them any, if you take away the oxygen from the situation, it stops. Tom, what are your thoughts?
I really love the idea that he wrote about with the circle, that Bruce Lee and I can't possibly affect you when I'm out over here. And I think everyone has a strong sense of personal space, and that circle may change from person to person, of course. But I feel like there's so much going on in our culture right now where people feel violated, even though the discussion and the battles and everything that takes part in our culture overall is way off yonder and nowhere near your personal circle. And
Yeah.
people are putting so much stake in other people's fights that it's like they're pushing their circle all the way over there when it doesn't involve you. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have interest. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be trying to affect the outcome, either in politics or in some event of some kind. You should definitely be focusing on things like that, but don't let them personally ruin you. Don't let them affect you. Don't tense up. Don't get anxious. Don't get depressed, because it's nowhere near you, not close, not in your circle. And you have to avoid the tensing up. You have to avoid the anxiety and the depression if you can. Take that deep breath and realize that the battle is over there and is not right here. Now, you focus on keeping the battles over there, but don't let them come close to your circle, but don't be anxious or depressed about it, because then the battle's going to come way closer to you if you just give up and tense up, because that's when your enemies or whatever is affecting you is going to advance on your position.
Sure. So Tom, that's a very metaphorical explanation kind of how to stay out of conflict, and ultimately how to keep a peace of mind, right? If we're projecting our circle into someone else's battle, say it's gosh, I don't know, what's a tough one? Politics. People get scared from that, right? Politics is a thing. I mean, what? So in a literal sense, I mean, if you were to apply this to a real life action, how would you, I guess, keep your circle to yourself? How would you not project it over there?
I think the first key is self-awareness. What is around you? What matters most to you? I think you should always have options. Should always have a plan B of some kind in case something does actually invade your circle, but you have to define what your circle is. You have to draw that circle around and have the patience and the skill and the necessary idea of what is your circle.
Yeah.
Know your limits. This was another chapter we discussed. Know your limits. Know your lines. Know if someone crosses that line, what you'll do. Don't just tense up in fear in anticipation of it, but actually have a plan so it's unconscious as soon as it happens. If someone steps across that line that you put down, you know exactly what you're going to do, and you just go into kill mode or whatever it is.
Kill mode.
Fight mode, fight mode, flight mode, whatever your choice is, have that plan, because then you won't tense up. It'll just be automatic. You'll be like, I'm running for the hills. I'm out. If this happens, if the line has been breached, I'm retreating, or I'm fighting, whatever it may be. Have that plan, and I think you'll begin to notice that you're a bit more free, and you're not suffering under the constraints, the restraints of the
size of your circle.
Yep.
Well, the threat at hand is really what I'm thinking of. So just have that plan B, have that plan C, whatever it may be, and don't put your stake in other people's battles. Cedric, your thoughts?
Oh yeah, no, I thought that was an interesting way to think about it. I did not bring it back to like, kind of the current, climate with people's ability to handle adversity, is how I like to put it. But yeah, 100% true there. As far as it seems as though now, literally a mild storm would ruin someone's day. Like, yeah, literally just a mild storm would be, in their circle. But for me, I feel like there's so many places to go with it. I like that visualization of the physical circle, and even that idea of like going over to someone's circle, but just the size of it growing. Because imagine if you're a big object, you can't move very many places.
Yeah,
there's very little things you can do without running into them, and the same thing is true with the circle. If your circle is very large, it's like you're constantly reacting, you're constantly doing this, that, and the other thing, and you're not staying calm and focusing on what you need to focus. But if you understand the proper size of your circle, not too big, not too small, because if it's too small, then you'll get hurt. But if it's the right size, then you'll stay safe, but still be able to see threats as they're coming out. Yeah. And I think that's really the whole point of everything. Because, when he's inside the circle, or if you had a really small circle, whatever, then, you get damaged.
So that's pretty interesting, what you guys are saying. Yeah, definitely you want to keep your circle small enough. I would argue the way to do that, man, is to focus more on yourself. I mean, it's a very, probably argued thing to say right now, because, anyone who says, well, if you want to help others, you obviously have to focus on other people. Well, I mean, you got to focus on yourself first, right? I mean, what did he say about anger? I think anger, that chapter about anger, anger without action, that one is perfect for this. Although, let's substitute anger with fear. I would say a lot of things that make people react in these ways is fear. Fear makes people make decisions that they probably shouldn't have done. If they step back and realized, hey, this is a situation that's going on, let's kind of stick to myself, think about myself, what makes sense logically to me, Okay, well, sounds like there's an issue here going on between these two factions. Okay, does that affect me in my hometown? Well, not directly. Okay, so maybe it doesn't affect me that much right now. Um, does it make me happy to see it? No, it doesn't make me happy to see it. Can I make a change? Yes, anyone can make a change. Anyone can make a change, but the thing is, it's got to be small changes first. It's got to be small. If you see anything like that in your community, you make that change your community first, right? And then again, as we were saying earlier, you have an idea, you share it to one person, they share it to another and another and another. Then it becomes big, but it starts with one person. Someone's got to kick that off, and it's got to be beneficial. It's got to be an all-encompassing, all good, thing to promote. I guess, an idea. It's got to be a good idea because people get behind good ideas because people really just want the general good for everyone. We all want good for everyone. But again, you got to shorten your circle. You got to make sure it's not too big. Don't let issues outside of your, realm affect you.
To build off that point a little bit more, if you're done there, I think it would benefit people a lot if instead they tensed up and got anxious about battles over there. You discover a way to aid or help in your best interests to keep the fight from coming to you.
So to have a type of anxiety that makes you want to act, is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily want to act, but want to help others because you know that the battle over there is affecting you.
Sure.
Right. If we're thinking of the small village, right, and the battle over yonder is where the battle currently is. The solution isn't to get anxious and tighten up because you know that the barbarians are going to soon be at the gate. Go out and be proactive. Go out and do action. That's
peer pressure is a real thing. People joke about that, but it is a real thing. Why do you think all this stuff's going on in the world today? I'd say peer pressure is a huge part of it. Well, it's the right thing to do, so do it. Yeah. They might be right. It might be the right thing to do, but maybe there's a better way to do it.
I'm just saying, if it's bothering you, why don't you do something about it instead of get tensed up and complain that it is happening?
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, if something bothers you, I would say, you did mention anxiety in the beginning. We kind of teetered away from that. I see that as an all-encompassing bad emotion. People don't want to be afraid because people appreciate confidence. Confidence gives them happiness. That comes from knowing what's going on, right? So, to know what's going on, I don't think anyone knows truly what's going on in every aspect of life, everywhere. You can, read a book, wink, wink, and, you'll learn a lot more and you'll actually gain a lot more knowledge on things that are going around, maybe in the world, maybe in the past that affects today. But, you can't understand everything. And the biggest thing is you can't rely on, other people telling you what's right and what's wrong if you haven't come to that understanding yourself. If you haven't agreed to that yourself, then, you can't, there's no reason to kind of stick to it because, you're the one in control of your actions. You're the one who makes the decisions for you and for the people around you. And if you don't see it as good, if you analyze it, you don't see it as good, then what would make you do it? People should only do things that are good for them and for the people around them. It's my personal belief.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Matt, on the anxiety piece, when you were talking about how it's like all in all bad,
sure.
Have you ever thought of the safety aspect of that? Like anxiety from, like if you'd hurt, like anxiety can be good. It causes you to focus on things you need to focus on. Like, imagine if you have no anxiety. Those are the same people that, don't care about doing poor in their job. They don't care about paying their rent. They don't have to worry about that because
Yeah.
like anxiety can be good, and it's just that balancing act. And like when it's all encompassing and is your whole life, then that's not good. But if things
Yeah.
aren't going well, it's like you want your body to have that natural response to help you survive.
Of course.
Kind of move forward. I don't know. I at least for me, that always like helped normalize anxiety, because it's like sometimes you're just going to be weird. Like you're just going to not feel okay. And normally that's your, I mean, if you have decent, like normal anxiety, that's your body telling you, hey, you need to fix something. Hey,
Yeah.
you're worried about X, Y, and Z. And you need to overcome those things.
So you're saying it should be a call to action.
Yeah. Like that's basically what it is. It's like you having, like, that's like once they get in your circle, that's when you should be, or once they're at your circle, like maybe you're not doing anything, but that's when you should be thinking about maybe having to do something, or when they're like right there. And
that's
then
a good
once they're in
point.
your circle, then it's action.
Yeah,
So I
how
guess
could you
when they're
know
in
to
your
pull
circle
your
for-
circle back if you're not anxious that they might cross into your circle?
Yeah. So something like that.
All right, guys. We have any final thoughts? Are we ready to move on to the next one?
I think we're good. Good work.
I'll take that as a we're moving on to the next one. I like it, dude.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully people got something out of that. I know I did. I liked Tom and Cedric. I liked your guys' descriptions. Here's a good one, man. If you want to be efficient, if you want to accomplish more in your life, if you think that you've got great ideas, but something's holding you back, maybe practice what we're going to talk about here in this chapter. So, Kime, tighten your mind is the name of this chapter. And what's going on is Joe Hyams, again, the author, was practicing Jeet Kune Do with Sterling Silliphant, and they were both, students of Bruce Lee. And they were practicing in front of Bruce Lee, and Joe was so focused on impressing Bruce, on hitting the right blows and making sure his form was perfect. He just put so much effort into trying to impress Bruce that he actually completely failed. He said something in the beginning to he's like, it must have been a sight to see two grown men contorting in the ways that they were in in his front yard in front of Bruce Lee. But Bruce Lee, he stopped them and he said, hey, look, he's like, you guys need to stop. He's like, how many times have I told you guys, you need to focus on what you want to accomplish. Your minds are not focused. And he looked at Joe. He said, Joe, you're so focused on trying to block his next attack and trying to hit him in the next attack that you're not doing it. You're too focused on doing the technique right that you're not actually doing the technique right. Right? I mean, how crazy is that as a concept? Especially, you think that to do something effectively, you should at least think about it. But no, I mean, if you think about it too much, there's that saying, paralysis by analysis, right? So anyway, Bruce told them, he started talking about Kime. He said, Kime, it's pretty much you focus only on the immediate goal, right? Whatever you need to accomplish, whatever the task is at hand that you need to accomplish, put all your focus on it, and you're going to get it done in a lot less time, a lot more effectively, and it's going to be a lot more efficient, right? So there's Kime again. Kime is a tight mind, as the title said I said earlier. It leads to being a little calmer too, right? If your mind isn't tight, that's another thing about it. If your mind isn't tight, if you're focusing on multiple other things, not only are you wasting your energy when you could be getting something done productively, but you're also a lot more anxious. You're also concerned about way too much. This actually definitely ties into, recognize a true threat, because your circle's way too big. You're thinking about way too much, right? But again, if you focus on one thing and you tighten that mind, you're going to become a lot calmer. You're going to become a lot more efficient. And crazy thing is, you're going to be a lot happier. What do you guys think?
Oh, for me, I thought this was extremely important. Like, I think that's one of the big differentiators between, people who are happy, is because they are focused, like they are engaged.
Yeah.
being engaged in what you're doing makes you feel good.
Mhm.
When you're thinking about all these other things, it's, you're just not living in the moment. If you're thinking about what's going to happen, what just happened, then you're not even thinking about what you're currently doing. And then you're just going to go back to doing that after that time's passed and think about what you just did because you weren't thinking about it right then. And then you're thinking what you're going to do. So for me, focus is extremely important. Just in enjoying what you're doing and also achieving success in what you're doing. Because if you go into it with a goal, understanding like, hey, this is what I'm going to do, this is what is happening, then it makes it substantially easier for you to complete that.
It's almost like you could relate this to the earlier lesson about living in the present. If you're focusing on the immediate goal, on what's in front of you, you're living in the true present. You're only focused on what's right in front of you, which is right in the present. And maybe that makes you a little happier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, I know your brain is racked with ideas. I can tell just looking at you.
I think
It's pretty impressive, actually.
I'm continuously amazed by Joe Hyams' ability to tie up so many lessons throughout the book into each chapter he writes. One chapter that comes to mind is the Empty Your Cup chapter, where it's get rid of all the bloat, get rid of all the useless information that's not bettering your life, get rid of all the distractions and all the information that's competing for your attention, and focus on what needs to be done and how to achieve your goals. That should be your single focus. It should be your only focus. And that is what truly matters. And that's how I would summarize this chapter.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much focusing on one goal. I mean, it's just, it's a lot of these lessons, man, a lot of the big issues that affect people. I sound like a broken record, but one of the big things to me is I hate seeing people with anxiety and stress. And again, it's so prevalent today, and it makes me so sad, man, because I imagine myself in that person's, and I know what it's like to be a dark place, and it's awful. You don't want anyone to feel like that. I don't want anyone to feel like that. So you focus on just what's in front of you. You're not thinking about the past, any mistakes you might have made. You're not thinking about the future, any kind of task you need to perform that may have a lot of weight to it. You're not thinking about anything that might drive you to kind of those depths that we were talking about. And again, it makes you happier. It just happiness is key, man. I mean, it might sound wishy-washy, to anyone who's not really thought about it, but I mean, honestly, again, happiness is key. What do people really want out of life, right? You can have a lot of money. Great. What happens when you spend that money? Okay, it's gone. So it's a utility. It's gone. Tom and I were talking about utility the other day. Unfortunately, it wasn't on stream. It was a pretty good conversation. Gonna have to get Tom to record those. Maybe he'll share them with you guys in secret, or maybe
some
I will.
bonus content, maybe. Matt, I'm actually curious before you push on if you could possibly address my sort of interpretation of happiness that I brought up in the last stream.
I will not. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
No, you say that people want happiness, and I do agree with you, but I think it is incredibly important to define what happiness is and if it is something worth striving towards.
So could you
could you
refresh my memory on what you said happiness was?
Sure. So I believe that happiness is the consistency of our being, that we continuously strive to be happy, and we thus take this utilitarian approach, or this utility approach, where we get into a pattern of doing the same things over and over and over again to give us that dopamine hit, whether it's buying fancy clothes, buying fancy cars, going on fancy dates, whatever it may be. We have to do it over and over and over again. It's like happiness is like a drug that we constantly need a hit of to keep us from misery and suffering. It's also keeping us from striving for more and achieving more. So that level of happiness, I think happiness is kind of the opiate of the masses. Whereas I think it's goal setting and understanding that in order to achieve greatness, you have to go through periods of sometimes suffering and misery, to be a bit hyperbolic. But you need to go through trials in order to achieve greater things that you could look back on at the rest of your life and say, I have overcome this. I am greater because of this. I've reached a stronger sense of self actualization because I went through this hard thing and came out much better because of it. Now, it doesn't mean go out and look for the absolute hardest thing to do. There needs to be a strategy and there needs to be a plan. So that's sort of my summary of happiness and the belief, my personal belief, that happiness is actually an opiate versus something that should actually be strived for. I think achievement is something that should be fully strive for.
So, first thing I'll address is, and you were talking about happiness. I understand the fancy dates. The only person I'll take on a fancy date is Cedric. Okay, everyone else needs to work a little bit harder.
Wait, what fancy? Yeah, you take me to some nice places. It's fine.
Matt has taken everyone to some nice places. I'll be honest here.
Yeah. Maybe if.
Hey, ladies, he's a fantastic date.
Yeah, he is.
Friend approved. Guy friend approved.
And he's big where he counts, in the wallet.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Man. So.
I have this. I had this joke, but I can't say it on stream. It's too off color.
We're helping people, man. Is this helping people? Is this a general helping everyone type of situation?
Yeah. No.
I'm glad we found some comedic relief.
Well, this will be off screen. One of those Easter eggs we might have mentioned earlier.
Matt, you're gonna say?
So, Tom, I think you're mistaking happiness with dopamine. I think you're mistaking happiness with the chemical that's released in our brain when we achieve something, right? They say, dopamine's released when you achieve a goal, when, and then you're rewarded for it. It's a rewarding chemical in our brain. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about it to go more in detail, but from the knowledge I do have on dopamine, that's what I know dopamine is on a biological scale. Happiness, I would define as contentment. I would define happiness as not having any kind of negative emotion pulling you down, right? No one wants to be sad, to be mad, to be fearful, right? No one wants to be uncomfortable. I believe you're exactly right. You need to go through some of those stages through uncomfortability to get to a higher sense of happiness. But the key is, Tom, is that the thing that's driving you to go through that uncomfortability and that, maybe sadness at the time, is the idea that you will be content in the end. Is the idea that you will be happy once you go through it, right? Because you need a driving factor. If you want happiness, if you want to do something, it's usually because it makes you happy, because it makes you content, right? Content in a sense. The issue with dopamine, and the issue with a lot of things going on in the world today, with social media, with materialism, with all that stuff, is the dopamine, the contentment. It's so quick. It's so quick. It comes. It hits you real quick, and it's so easy to get it. All I have to do is look at my phone. A bunch of different colors on there, a bunch of different games I can download and play. I can kill zombies. I can, help my plants grow stronger to kill the zombies. It's so easy to get dopamine, right? But it's not easy to stay consistent in finding contentment because there's too much dopamine. So maybe, one thing I will say is you do need to slow down some of that dopamine release. You do need to slow down some of that that little hit, that drug that you keep taking every second, every time you look at your phone. Because what people should be striving for is contentment. And what's contentment? Contentment is a lack of fear, of anxiety, of stress, of depression. That's what happiness is to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say it's all about hope. Like, I think hope's a big thing because I mean that's at least how I'd like to sum it up. Because it's that idea. It's like hope. It's faith. It's that idea that things are going to get better. Because I think that there's contentment in that, but it's also there's that like added component of it also being about it getting better. Because I think that that's one of the at least things for me that I mean I think contentment's a big part of it. Like you can definitely be very happy, but at least for me when I think about it, it's like I want that hope piece in there as
Hope.
well.
Luke
Hope.
Skywalker.
Yeah, Luke.
Yeah.
Luke, I am your father. Yeah, so that hope piece I think is really important. That's why so many religious people are very happy. Like they truly are. If you have that level of faith and trust in something totally outside of yourself, then you're at least when I think, going to be way more happy because anything happens to you, you always have that faith. You are always good. I mean, not to say you don't have bad days, and people are people, but it's like in a greater sense, you'll be better. And like, there's plenty of other things that, you could just like, I feel like people need to Google how to be happy and then just like try to do some of those things and see if they feel better.
Yeah. What are some things that can make someone happy?
Community, discipline.
Mm-hmm.
When this was chapters, I mean, the one where it's talking about like focus, Kime, like that kind of stuff. Working towards a goal and accomplishing it.
Yeah. It's happiness that makes you happy. It sounds so simple, right? I mean, a lot of people would argue, well, what do I need to put in all the time and effort to accomplish that stuff when I could just make a lot of money doing whatever job, or maybe they won the lottery, who knows, and just spend it on the clubs and spend it on alcohol, and that makes me so happy. Well, why would I put in all that time when I could just get it so quickly? Right? But maybe it's a struggle that really makes it lasting.
Well, I certainly think it's this horizontal motion. So everyone ultimately finds, and Matt, I completely agree with you that contentment is a strong thing to strive for, and we all have our different levels and planes of contentment. What I'm interested in is helping people achieve that higher plane. So I like to think of a mountain, for instance. A lot of people are happy just milling about on the base of the mountain. There's no risk, but there's also no reward. They're happy there. And to each their own, completely. I'm not here to tell anyone how to live their life. I'm just interested in helping those that want to start climbing that mountain where there is some risk. There's going to be trial, there's going to be error, there is going to be hardship. But once you overcome that, you then begin to climb. And when you climb, you're achieving higher levels of, I believe, contentment and happiness that you previously didn't know were there or existed. And then you go through the next hardship and you come out on top. And now you eventually get to the point of either self-actualization, self-enlightenment, and you get this beautiful view of everything you've accomplished. And you see all the people down at the base that have never risked anything. They are more than happy to, as Matt pointed out, get that dopamine hit. Continuously get that dopamine hit, whether it's drugs, video games, whatever it may be, whatever's keeping you distracted from climbing that mountain. And climbing the mountain isn't for everybody, but the people that are into it, that want to do it, and to achieve higher levels of thinking and satisfaction and happiness, need to go through those periods of hardship, because it is not easy to climb a mountain, but by God is it rewarding.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to move on to the next chapter. That is, and I love how you keep bringing up the mountain, man. I mean, it's a great metaphor, because to get up a mountain, you got to go through a lot of, I don't know, how many people watching this maybe have gone hiking recently. But if you haven't hiked too, sweet, that's all we need. But if you haven't gone hiking recently and you look at a hill, just a hill, say like it's a foothill, that'll be easy to climb up that. Hell no, it's not easy to climb up that thing. It might, you might be panting by the time you get up there. I don't know, maybe I'm weak. But when I first started hiking, again, that's kind of what happened to me. So anyway, it's tough. It's a good metaphor because it's rewarding when you get to the top. So,
Yeah.
all right, guys,
Oh,
let's move on.
no, sorry, not to, I guess, to stretch it out longer, whatever. So on the mountain hill thing, for me, I love mountain biking. Like, that's one of the big things, and so I actually will ride out from my house to the trails, and you can see the top of the trails from my house, and you can see my house when you get to the very top of the trails. But it's 4 miles, and it's 700 feet, and it's only uphill the entire time. So it's not quite 1,000 feet of elevation change. It's 700 feet, only uphill over 4 miles. And that's like, I don't know, like I've done it at like 5 a.m. before, like woken up to get up there by like 5:30 or so. And it's like what Tom was talking about. When you get to the top of the mountain, when I'm at the very top and I can see my house and I know it's all downhill from here, it's
Yep.
one of the best feelings.
All downhill. Well, the one thing I would warn people is that while the mountain is a great metaphor, I would actually argue there is no top of the mountain. In the game of life, there's no top of the mountain. You got to keep striving. You got to keep going up. I would say, actually, no, I take that back. I would say the top of the mountain is when you've lived your life. You're on your deathbed and you say, I lived my life to the fullest. I don't have any regrets. I am happy. That's the top of the mountain. But to get there, it's a lot of climbing. A lot of climbing. Okay, we ready now? Ready for the next one?
Yeah, give it to us, Matt.
This one gets me really excited because Cedric knows I love this subject of flow states and peak human performance. Let's put it in context of Joe Hyams and what he's saying when he was working with Bruce Lee. So, Joe Hyams, one day after practice, asked Bruce Lee, he said, what would you do if you were in a real fight? And Bruce thought about it, and he said, gosh, he said, I've thought about that quite a bit. He said, if I did get in a fight, I would probably kill my adversary. And when I was in trial for killing that person, I would tell them, I'm not guilty. It wasn't me who killed it. It was it that killed it. And Joe said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, it is a person's ability to act without thinking, right? To kind of subconsciously react almost. You could call it reacting to, stimuli, to external stimuli. Say, for example, like I said, I love flow states. This kind of leads into it. Say, for example, someone asks you, what's the color of the sky? You can answer right away, it's blue. What's 2 + 2? It's 4. Stuff like that. Easy questions. That's it. You're acting, you're reacting pretty naturally, right? So Bruce told him, it's a form of unconscious action. It's a very fluid form of action, and it's called Mushin, right? So Joe talked to Bruce a little later on. They were talking about what Mushin is. He said that, it's almost a constant state of flowing, to where you're constantly acting in this state of flow, in this state where it is taking over, it being the unconscious reacting to certain stimuli. He said when you do that, you again, you're a lot more efficient, you're a lot more effective, you're using a lot less energy. Sounds a lot like Kime, doesn't it? Right? That's because it's all connected. Again, Joe Hyams, great author, connecting all this stuff, man. So then Joe talks about he worked with Jim Lau, his other master in Wing Chun, and he was talking about how he was trying to master Mushin. He thought he mastered it, and he tried to use it in this battle, and he got his ass kicked because he was thinking about it too much. He went to Jim Lau. Jim Lau said, yeah, well, because like a lot of people, you learned the lesson, and then you forgot the point of the lesson. You forgot what it was about. The point of the lesson of Mushin, what it's about, is that you're supposed to be doing things without thinking about them, right? You're a lot more effective when you don't think about it. So, what do you guys think about that? I don't know if that was a good lead-in. Let me make it a
Oh.
little more exciting.
Tom, what do you think about that?
Mushin, awesome thing. Everyone's flowing. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just give it a go. So yeah, we love Stephen Kotler books, all the Steel and Fire, Rise of Superman, Flow States, that sort of stuff. So yeah, just right in line with already kind of how I feel about it. Just getting in that state where you don't have to think about it, because sometimes you let your brain get in the way.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible what a person can do when they're just going and they're not thinking about it. And they're just sitting there, just doing their thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like to a certain extent, now I'm just thinking about like a professional, or a master. Do you know that a master does not hit the hardest? The master does not hit the softest. The master hits it just hard enough. And I feel like that's almost what the flow state will give you. It's like you're putting forth just the right amount of pressure to accomplish what you're trying to do, because too much is a waste and too little you won't accomplish with it. So.
What do you think, Tom? Do you think we're really explaining flow state accurately? It's tough because I've read a lot of books on these, so I want to make sure that we're kind of explaining this as effectively as possible to an audience member who may not have studied this at all.
Yeah, fair point. Yes.
I mean, I keep coming to the idea of proportional response and acting in kind to what you're receiving and never overexerting or forcing yourself more so than your opponent, because then that just becomes escalation. If someone criticizes you, that why would you just completely lash out in a fit of rage and violence? You proportionally respond with a retort of some kind. But it's also important to know that this tit for tat level of response is also not right. So you need to consistently get into a flow state, for sure. But you have to put forward just the right amount of pressure to hopefully end the conflict without prolonging it. So there is a balance between actually fighting the let me get my my thoughts in order here. So there is a proportional response,
sure,
to someone else's aggression, but you should quickly and as effortlessly as possible put down whatever that aggression is. You shouldn't go tit for tat, proportional response all day, but it should be measured, but to end the conflict. So as Cedric was just saying, the just right approach, the fingertip feel, and that's something that's developed over time. It's not something that you're immediately going to get into. You need to go forth, you need to practice, you need to really just keep these lessons in mind.
Yeah. So sounds like what you're saying, Tom, is that when we do react to certain situations, when certain situations arise, you need to make sure that you interact with it or react with it in the correct manner, in a manner in which you come out just about as happy as you could. Is that what you're saying?
In a way, I mean, I'm thinking both in terms of what would a physical or verbal confrontation be, as well as one of a larger, more metaphysical argument. In a violent response, your goal should be to immediately end the battle as quickly and as swiftly as possible. Because if one person gives you one punch, the proportional response shouldn't be just two punches and go tit for tat until 3, 4. It should be as swift as possible. And I feel the same is in with verbal confrontation. When you prolong confrontation, it gets bloodier, it gets uglier, etc. And in everyday life context, I think it's incredibly important to getting into a flow state to attack our goals, our issues, our problems in as swift a manner as possible as to move on.
Yeah, so I need to explain flow state a little better. It kind of tells me that the audience probably doesn't realize.
Sure.
So what they're talking about with that was very rude. Tom, yes, that's exactly right. You definitely want to make sure that you are dealing with things in the right situation. But the key thing to take, because that's pretty pivotal in his chapter about anger without action, right? So the importance with Mushin, Mushin is acting without thinking. Mushin is being effective, which comes through not thinking about what you're doing. If you think more about something, you usually overanalyze it, and then you're not as effective in doing it, right? Say you are supposed to be giving a speech, right, in front of a class or in front of a, say you need to give, a presentation in front of your job, in front of your employees, your coworkers. Well, the more you think about it, the more you're going to stress yourself out, the more you're going to kind of freak out about all the negative things that could happen, right? But if you stop thinking about it, if you kind of move into this state of unconsciousness, which is, comes from many different sources. We're going to have to go into it a lot more. We're going to have to read some books on flow states to kind of talk about them
maybe
a little bit
a little
more.
easier to go back to my previous point earlier in this podcast about your circle.
Yeah.
And you have to have the plan in place, your plan B, your plan C. So when someone does cross your line, it is unconscious. It is immediate, and you know exactly what to do. Because if you spend too long thinking about it, then the battle could already have been lost. There's a very interesting strategic, a very interesting strategic diagram that I was reading about today called the OODA loop. And this OODA loop is essentially what warriors, what battlefield commanders look at when measuring different gradients of war. There is the observation phase, observing what is going on. There is the deciding phase. Then there is the action phase. And this goes into a circle. So if you can cut out the decision-making phase, your process from observation to action has become incredibly more efficient.
Yeah.
Because if you spend your time too long deciding, the battle may have already been lost.
Yeah. That's a good point. And that's where it comes into play, right? Because Mushin
Exactly.
is it's that reactivity.
Automatic.
Yeah, it's automatic. So, I mean, yeah, it's
It triggers a response, and you immediately, it is like the ultimate switch that just turns on, and you lose the ability to make decisions, and you just do it. I actually remember this very specifically. I once gave a lecture in front of my classmates at Berkeley. It was on business warfare, philosophy. Warfare, business, and philosophy. It was a fantastic lecture, but I blacked out during it. I was nervous. I was scared. All these feelings. But I got an A+ on it. How did I do it? I practiced to the point where I knew that my mind was going to shut off because I was nervous. That I kept going. I knew what I wanted to say. I had practiced what I wanted to say. So even though my conscious mind shut down out of the nervousness and the anxiety of the situation, my unconscious and subconscious mind went right into action and took over. That is the flow state that is Mushin.
reactivity. Well, something important. If anyone's ever read Outliers, Cedric got me to read, which I'm very thankful. Maybe we'll cover that as all three of us. Is in order to be a master at anything, you got to put in 10,000 hours, right? That's what they say. It's a scientific fact. So, if you really want it to
I
come
think it's
out
scientific
more,
observation, but not fact.
Huh?
I think it's a scientific observation, but not fact.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the whole point is that
there's no
you just have
law
to put
of
in
nature
time.
that says specifically at the 10,000th hour, but it is an observation that people that put in the work and effort of 10,000 hours, they typically large potential to
So
become masters.
we can call it a scientific observation, but it's definitely a factor that a lot of people go off of, and it's a factor that a lot of people state. Stephen Kotler, Jamie Wheal, who studied flow states, they mention multiple times in their books and their studies that 10,000 hours is what's necessary, for example, for the monks to master this state of meditation to where they can get in this flow state, right? It took 10,000 hours for, chess players to get so good, for pianists to get so good, any kind of musician. So, yes, let's say it's an observation. But the important thing is, take from that is that everyone, I was thinking about this today, man. I maybe it's just me, but you have those ideas, those ideals. You say, oh well, if I was in this situation, I would react this way. If I were in that situation, say I was on TV and someone was asking me about, how to best treat someone, whatever. Oh well, I'd tell them this and I'd say it perfectly. Well, the thing is, if you don't put in the time to practice, 10,000 hours goes to mastery. If you don't put in the time to practice it, then when it happens, you're more likely to tense up. You're more likely to not say what you're planning to say. It sounds great when you're thinking in your mind. You say, oh, well, I would totally say that. But the thing that we don't think about is the human capability to, unfortunately, get in our own way, which comes from a lack of practice and a lack of preparation. So Mushin probably comes up more. It comes out. You're more reactive when you put in more effort into practicing doing anything.
Let me ask you gentlemen this, and the audience de facto. Do you know where your fire extinguisher is in the house? Do you know where your first aid kit is in the house? Do you know what your plan is in the case of an emergency?
We don't have a fire extinguisher, so that's not good.
Yeah, I don't have one of those. I live I would just leave my
That's
house.
Not good.
Maybe I'd throw some water on it.
Yeah, but what if it's a stove fire? What if it's an electric fire?
Oh, then I'll just leave my apartment.
And I think it's quite obvious to see where the issue is with this, but a relatively small fire could burn down your entire house because you didn't go through the effort of putting together a plan. Now, we could say flow state all day, but that's simply planning, and without needing the decision-making process. The OODA loop, for instance, you go from observation, fire extinguisher. It's just automatic. There's no, what do I need? Do I need to throw a bunch of water on it? Do I need to call the fire department? Do I need this? It's just instant. No decision-making time. That fire stays small and it gets put out. Or that cut, or whatever the medical emergency may be. It's like, stop the bleeding, then call 911. So it's having that plan and taking out that decision-making process, that conscious decision-making process. So you go instantly from observation to action.
Tom doesn't like my flow state idea. That's what I'm getting out of this. It's okay, Tom. We're going to convert you. I swear to God, man. Peak human performance is the key to accomplishment. But
Matt talks about it like it's like a cult, though.
I don't think that's something, unless it can be boiled down to a micro example, like where your fire extinguisher is. I don't think it's.
So, Tom, it's pretty simple. There are 4 stages to flow states. It's not in this book, but I'm going to explain it to you. First, you need to go through a lot of struggle, right? Then you relax. Then you're in a flow, and then you need to recover. Great example is a runner, right? They call it runner's high. All right. Well, when you're running, it sucks. Everyone hates running from the get-go. When you first start running, it sucks. But you keep doing it. You're running so much that you start to kind of understand that this is the MO. You're running and nothing's really changing. You kind of start to relax and accept the fact that you're running. And then suddenly you're in this state where, God, I could run forever. I'm in a runner's high. So it's kind of as simple as that. You know, we're going to have to read some books to kind of go more into it. But there's a lot of There's a lot of biology that goes into it. There's a lot of chemicals that are released in your brain. Parts of your brain become hypoactive, which means they shut off. Other parts of your brain, more of the subconscious parts of your brain, become hyperactive. And then that Mushin, becomes a lot easier to, kind of act upon. Have you ever seen, what's that movie where the guy, Limitless? Have you ever seen the movie Limitless?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like Limitless, right? Because when your subconscious is working, you're pulling ideas and facts that you didn't know were there, right? That's what that it is. You're acting without thinking about it because your subconscious has picked up on a lot of these ideas and a lot of knowledge that you have no idea you even knew how to do, right? But you know, aside from that, I don't want to diminish what you were saying. It is quite important to know how to deal with a fire if it happens in your house. If you don't have a plan to put out a fire, if someone's really hurt, if you haven't planned for it, there's no amount of machine that's going to help you because your subconscious has picked up on nothing that's going to help you. Maybe something on TV, but
Well,
in
I
case
think
you don't know.
I think two definitions are emerging here, where there's the proactive version of Mushin, and then there's the reactive version. The reactive version is the one that I'm bringing up. It's just like instant. Someone crosses your line, you know what to do. If there's a fire on your stove, you know what to do. If you get cut, you know what to do. Whereas yours is more of a proactive version, where it's like, my goal is over here, and I need to go through a long and winding road in order to get there. It will be difficult, but eventually I'll be able to draw on my experiences and the wealth of knowledge that is behind me to propel myself forward.
No, actually, it's more so Kime, that tighten your mind. The initial struggle is intense focus, right? When you're running, you're focusing on running. When you're not thinking of anything else but running, suddenly it becomes an acceptable fact of what you're doing. You relax, and then you're in a flow state. So, if anything, actually, what my definition is, it's putting in an intense amount of focus first, stopping yourself, get rid of all external things that are get rid of everything that's distracting you. Focus on one thing. Give such an intense focus on that one goal, Kime, which we just talked about, which is a form of struggle, right? You're stressing, there's norepinephrine pumping through your brain. Happens when you're stressing. And then you relax in whatever way you need to relax. Say that's reading a book, say that's watching TV, say that's talking to friends. And then you're flowing. And then that's how the brain works. And again, we're going to have to look a lot more into, we're going to have to talk about this a lot more, maybe in a future, conversation about the book. But that's my idea of flow, and hopefully that's understandable.
Is struggle a prerequisite for flow?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so tying this back to our earlier definition of happiness and the lack thereof of struggle and misery and all these other things, how is flow state compatible with happiness?
Because again, you've got that contentment in your mind as a goal, right? We said in order to get happiness, you have to go through some struggles to get happiness, but the thing that's driving you is happiness, is contentment, is the need to be content. So it's the same, it's quite literally the same exact thing, but on a, I guess, a smaller scale, on a lot quicker scale, to become more efficient, to kind of react to situations using your subconscious more efficiently, less energy. You need to struggle initially. You need to put a lot of focus into something. Say that's your work. Say that's listening to someone. Say that's empathizing with them. It takes quite a bit to empathize with someone effectively. So it takes a lot of focus. And then you relax, and then you're rewarding yourself, basically. A lot of struggle, rewarding yourself, then you're in flow. When you're in flow, you're a lot more efficient, you get things done more, you're living more in the moment, your mind's a lot calmer, it's a lot more tight from the Kime. That's what flow is.
Beautiful. Cedric, any thoughts? I feel like Matt and I have been having quite the back and forth here. I love.
Oh, on the flow state stuff? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I thought it was good. I mean, the one thing I would say that, as far as I look at the flow state stuff, I think the key thing with it is actually the level of intensity. Because when they're really talking about it, it's like a very high level. Like, so if you're going to use running as an example, I mean, you need to be really running. Like, it's like, a full sprint to the point that you really, like, are, pushing yourself physically. Or something like they really put it with action sports. That was, like, the big thing that they used was action sports, and how that those people were achieving so many great things at such a great rate. But that's at least how I feel. Like, I think, like, the skiing that I do, like, really just makes me have a whole better week and just stay overall more focused in what I'm doing. But I think the principles of flow state, like, even if you can just trick yourself to be a little more intense, a little more, thing, and then just stop. At least for me, it makes me overall more focused.
There you go. It works. There's, no, I mean, it's, it might sound very culty. I'm not going to make you drink any Kool-Aid that's going to hurt you. But I mean,
did you know that? Okay, no, but that's almost a worse reference. Did you know that guy from the Jamestown Massacre? He actually made them do that multiple other times.
No.
Yeah, so he made them drink Kool-Aid many other times, but there was nothing in it.
Oh, so he tricked him. I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole because we kind of want to stick to stick to Kime and Zen and the martial arts, but that's very eye-opening. That's almost like that whole frog in a boiling pot, right? You don't want to just give it to him first, right? If you turn the heat up really fast, it starts boiling. The frog's going to jump out, but if you slowly heat the water up, you're going to have a cooked frog. So is that kind of what you're saying? He probably slowly kind of tricked them into, just drink this Kool-Aid. Oh, you'll do it. And then suddenly you put something in and they just had no idea.
I don't know. I just thought it was, I don't even know exactly what I think about it, but I just feel like it makes it a little more interesting. Like, because at first you're just like, why are all these dumb people doing this? But then you're like, oh, so this is like, he normalized it. I don't think it was like a zillion times, but it was like a few, like 3 or 4 times. And he did each time tell them that they were going to die, or that, like, it's, and even when they drank at that time, they said that that's what it was for. I don't think it was unknown. I
like it. We're gonna have to discuss that in another section. We gotta stay on material.
Matt,
here.
You like it. Let's be for the record.
Well, I don't necessarily like that. Actually, I don't like that at all. I really dislike that quite a bit.
You're on record saying you like it.
I don't like it.
All right, give us the next chapter, Matt.
All right, next one's Instinctive Action. This one really just ties into Mushin, what we were just saying. Joe, he doesn't necessarily give an actual example of a time he ran into someone or interacted with someone to learn this lesson. He just said that, when you look at martial arts and martial artists, you notice that they develop this type of awareness that you might call a sixth sense, right? A sixth sense is almost realizing something might happen without actually seeing it. It's kind of precognition, right? Cedric, we already talked about precognition. But he says with this sixth sense, kind of knowing what's going to happen in the future before it happens, it makes you a lot calmer, right? Mushin comes out a lot easier because you're detached from that danger because you already know it's coming, right? You have a sense for it and you're more confident. When you're more confident, you generally react a lot better and you interact with things a lot better. He gave an example. He talked about Seven Samurai, which I watched that movie last night. It's really long. It's like 3.5 hours, but it was a great movie. I'd recommend you guys watch that. Recommend anyone watch it. It was
made in Tom Cruise, right?
1950s. It's made in the 1950s.
Wait, The Last Samurai?
Seven Samurai.
Oh, the Seventh Samurai. Oh, I thought you said The Last Samurai.
Last Samurai
is the one with the...
Last Samurai was good.
Whitewashing Asian culture.
Hey,
Seven Samurais.
Don't act like it's not a good movie. Still a great movie.
Dude, I love that movie. I love all those movies. I watched Enter the Dragon last night too. So they're good movies. Um, but yeah, so the thing I took away from this is a person practices Mushin more if you put in more effort and you're more proactive. As Tom was saying, if you kind of plan for something more and you're more reactive to situations, it greatly improves your ability to handle situations by having that precognition. Right? What are we thinking, guys?
Cedric?
Tom defers. Cedric goes.
No, Tom, you go.
Oh, Cedric defers. Back to Tom.
Matt, you go.
Matt, that boom.
I already went. I told you. It's just you practice Mushin. You're flowing, and the more you do it, the more precognition you have. It's a great. It's like I was saying with flow. There's a lot of great things, and I'm not gonna say too much to scare anyone into thinking it's a cult, like Cedric said. But you do kind of get a sixth sense because when your unconscious is working, you sense things that maybe you wouldn't have sensed if you were overanalyzing things. Because believe it or not, when you think a lot with that part of your brain that we call our deep thinking self or our slow thinking self, according to Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for economics in 2003. It's then you don't react so quickly. So it's basically you want to react more to things, right? Because life is quick, life is moving, it's ever changing. So I said I wasn't gonna go, but you guys tricked me into talking more. You two need to talk about this.
Okay, I'll build off that. Life is comprised of a few key decisions in our life. First decision possibly being college. Yes, college, no college. For some people, it's a lot earlier than that. High school, no high school. Crime, no crime. And everything's building up over time. That there's always a decision that relies on earlier decisions. It's kind of like this butterfly effect, right? Where one decision impacts a future decision and the world around us. There's lots of great pieces of literature and media on the butterfly effect. It's not as singular as a butterfly loses its wings in Africa and suddenly there's a tornado out in the Midwest in the United States. There's multiple different variations of the butterfly effect in precognition, and builds on top of that. But understanding the situation, observing the situation, and I think this is when we actually focus on the deciding part as well of the kind of OODA loop that I keep bringing up, that there needs to be a decisive action phase in each one of our decisions as well. In the Mushin side of things, there's the what do you call it? I just lost my train of thought. I was steaming ahead there. I don't know.
It was good.
Cedric.
It was good. The one thing I'll say about your butterfly effect before we kind of go into the rest, have you ever really thought about that, man? Because I kind of think, because, my definition of a person's personality comes from Robert Greene, comes from Freud. A person is their DNA, right? So their parents' DNA that combines to make them. Their parentage, right? Especially from whatever young ages. I'm not going to say because I don't know off the top of my head. And then from their interactions with the world, right? From their constant interactions with things. So it's a mix of nature and nurture and the DNA, right? So, I mean, you think about that butterfly effect, man. If you were to change one little thing in the past, that changes the way someone learns something. Say
or how someone looks at you, or how many times have someone thought of you about reaching out to you or contacting you or offering you something, but they sat back, they thought of a previous encounter with you and changed their minds. We will never even be aware of that, but it's happened nearly every single day of our lives, that someone has possibly thought of us but did nothing or reacted at all because of a previous encounter or impression you may have given them. So that's why it's incredibly important to carry a level of consistency across all your relationships, and always put your best foot forward, because if that person does think of you, you want them to have a favorable memory of you so they can help you instead of the other way around. But the butterfly effect, it's incredibly interesting. I wrote a paper on this in college. It was there's a video game that came out in 2015, 2016 called Until Dawn. It was a horror-based video game that had over 3,000 something different endings. And how they did that was you basically had a cast of 7 characters. And all the characters had different relationship levels. And the external environment proposed multiple challenge to this group of 7 friends, you could say. And what ended up happening was essentially there's different tensions, and you can pick different dialogue trees or different reactions. And each one of your choices affects another member of the group or another moment, and it butterflies out that there's multiple trees of decision and process. And it's this, to tie this back to the book and precognition and understanding what may lie ahead, you have to kind of visualize, am I really making the right choice here, and making the analysis, and understanding that if the flows change, if the winds change, or if the relationships change, that is your decision the best one that you've put forward. Is gonna, if you're constantly flippant to people, they're gonna be unlikely to help you in the future. And the more and more you do that, even if it's for a very brief period of your life where you're disdainful, resentful, hateful, the people that you meet during that period, all the people, they may see you completely differently, and they won't help you when you need them most, even if it's for the briefest moment in your life. That's why you have to carry this level of consistency forward, and be nice, and be kind, and be thankful, and be helpful to those around you, because kindness pays with interest, in my belief. And down the line, the butterfly effect, it'll eventually come back and help you.
Another way of saying karma, huh?
Karma, yeah. Another way of saying karma, but precognition, analyzing the future. Obviously, it's not as easy as tea leaves, but I think we learn from our experiences. We learn what works in the past, and we can use this to assess the future. We have, as a human species, a fantastic ability to understand the future in a way unlike any other species. And although if you knew 2 minutes into the future, you'd be a trillionaire because you could predict things like nobody else, i.e. the stock market, we have this ability of putting ourselves in our future selves' mind and shoes, and analyzing the potential environment that we may be in based on our decisions today and of yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I do have to say, I appreciate you having this idea from this chapter, because I hadn't thought about the character building aspects at all. What I took from this is a lot different than what you took, which is great, because now anyone listening to this can take 2 different lessons from the same thing, right? What you're talking about is fantastic, right? The way you react, again, going back to karma, you should make sure that the way you're interacting with people is the right way. Think about what might happen in the future, because if you treat someone badly, it may most likely come back to haunt you, to kick you in the butt. It's a great way to think about it. No one can necessarily read the future, but if you place your bets in the right place, you can at least make a good guesstimate as to what may happen more likely than another outcome. Right?
I think the same idea came from the chapter, and I've read this in other kind of martial arts literature, that when 2 masters or 2 master warriors are fighting, they're thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead. Same thing goes for chess. They're thinking 5 or 6 moves ahead, and they're anticipating their opponents. And it's this battle that's actually being waged in the future, but being fought today. And I think that's incredibly appealing.
Yeah.
For me, I think it almost even, you could even go back even to the flow state stuff we were talking about. Remember when he was saying the like wingsuit guys, and he was like signaling off the guy's foot, and the whole thing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
to elaborate on that, the Red Bull. So if you've ever seen Transformers, I think it's Transformers: Dark of the Moon, that movie.
Yeah.
There's a scene where these guys jump off a building, supposedly in New York, and they're all in wingsuits.
It really did happen.
Yeah, it really did happen. Michael Bay really got the guys from Red Bull and had them jump off a building, but they had to train for so long. They had to, as Tom was saying, they had to prepare so that they could all kind of get in this group flow to where they would work together seamlessly, right? So just prelude. Go ahead, Cedric.
Yeah, and for me, I think all this is really saying, like, I don't think it's really precognition. For me, it's just seeing things clearly. I feel like this kind of has to go with, you could even, draw some parallels to circle thing. If your circle is so big and you see your circle as being so big, then you are actually clouded by all the things that you see as going wrong and all these stuff. But if your circle is the right size and you can just see what's just on the outside, it's like that's your precognition. That's when you're seeing all right, they're in the circle. All right, they're there. And that can be just for anything. It's just noticing, oh, that person wasn't quite smiling today, because you're actually engaged, you're actually focused, you're actually noticing what they're doing. And then that might, cause you to do X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't necessarily have to always be some overarching idea that like you're having all these thoughts about. It can just be just a sense. Okay, I need to do this. Oh, I need to do that. And I think that just comes with being engaged, being focused, and
almost like if you do the right thing and you focus enough, your inner monologue is going to speak out and tell you, hey, you should probably do this. You should probably do that. So I'm so happy that we all took different things from this chapter, because that's so much better for learning from an idea like this. Like I said, I totally only thought of this in a strictly physical sense, right? Because when I think of these flow states, that's strictly physical. It's physically, biologically what happens, right? But you look at the cognitive, effects of an idea like this, there's a lot more you can take out of it, right? There's a lot more, maybe you should interact with people a little better, consider what might happen in the future. You might have a better outcome if you do. Maybe treat people a little better, they'll treat you a little better. Crazy idea, right?
Yep.
Cedric, if you do the right thing, if you focus enough on what's so important to you, maybe there's an inner monologue that'll come out and tell you, hey, this is probably the right thing to do. It's that kind of sixth sense telling you what the right thing to do is, right? Maybe that right thing too leads to better karma, right? That kind of treats you better in the future. Maybe you have kind of a sense that doing this now is going to help me in the future, but it comes from focus, right? So there are a lot of great things that come from this chapter, right? So I'm happy we all had different ideas. Hopefully anyone who's watching this can kind of tie them all together and utilize it, in any way that benefits your life, any way that benefits anyone else's life.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready for the next chapter?
Yep.
Sweet. My phone died and my fingers are cold because it's cold outside and I'm sitting outside. But I opened it up, so we're chill. All right, Unthinking Pain. Dude, this one I listened today. This is so a lot of this stuff from this book I try to practice. This Unthinking Pain is probably the toughest one for me to get a hold of. So to get into the material, so Joe Hyams, he starts a chapter saying, martial artists, they need to deal with pain. It's just when you're in martial arts and you're hitting people, you got to accept the fact that you're going to be in some pain. Someone's going to hit you. To get stronger, you have to, hit some things. You might bleed, you might hurt. It's going to happen. He said not everyone in martial arts is a Zen master, but, the people that do martial arts enough, they share enough of their skills and their lessons with each other to where you could almost call it a collective Zen mentality. So he talks about this guy, Zhang Tai Li, who was a Taekwondo master. He was supposed to box this guy. I don't remember the name of the boxer, unfortunately, but he said to practice, he was punching this wooden board with his bare fists. And Joe said he walked into his dojo, and the guy was so focused on punching the board that he didn't even realize they came in. He said his knuckles were bleeding. They were staining the board. And he just kept pounding the board and pounding the board, hitting it, hard. And then, he stopped and he noticed that those guys were there. And he went up and he talked to him, and Joe said, how the hell did you do that? He said, didn't you realize your knuckles were hurting? And he said, actually, they didn't start hurting until just now when you mentioned that. And he said, well, didn't it hurt when you were punching the board? And he said, well, no, actually. He said, I was so focused, I detached my mind to something else, and, I didn't even feel any pain. And Joe said, well, how do you do that? He said, well, here's what you do. He said, you need to control your breathing, and you need to control your focus. Right? He said you need to focus, say, on a point on the wall, say a far off object, anything that's not directly what you're doing, right? If it involves pain. And he said then you think about just anything. Focus on any memory, anything that, again, is not what's going on. And you can kind of detach yourself from the brain, or from the pain. So he talks about his master. He says, his master had to get surgery, and the doctors told him to take anesthetics. He said, no, I'm not going to. And the doctors pleaded with him, but they ended up doing it without anesthetics. And he said his master didn't flinch. For 2 hours they did surgery, and he didn't flinch. He was never hurt. And when they were done, he opened his eyes, he walked off, he was fine. That's pretty incredible, man. If people can really,
Do
you
not
don't
try
feel
at home,
pain,
kids.
you don't do surgery. God, it's so insane. So, I guess to kind of say how to do this again, focus on something again that's not the painful artifact. That saying mind over matter. It plays so much into effect here. And the important thing that this guy Zhang Taili says is that the brain is more powerful in its ability to process and to process things in detail than pain is on your body, than the nerve cells leading to your brain. So does that make sense? You're able to process things to more detail, into more focus. You can focus on something like that more than pain would affect you. Does that kind of make sense? Do you guys kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No. That was a no. I don't think so. What do you guys think? How about maybe you guys kind of elaborate into it, and maybe we'll hopefully come to an agreed idea with what is saying here.
I feel like it's just mental strength. I think it's just understanding that pain is a construct of your own mind. That like pain is only there because you let it be there, not like, and it has a purpose. Not to say he didn't feel anything. He knows that he had reached a different point, where he could be so aware of his own body that he didn't let the pain be something that overcame him, because it's solely a construct.
Well, he said in his book, he said when he was punching the board, he wasn't even thinking about it. He said he was thinking about his home back in Korea, and he said he was thinking so in depth about the laughter of the children and the hills and his family and his homes that he didn't even think about the pain, that it wasn't even an idea in his mind.
Yeah, because he's reached such a point where he can just, it's not even part of him.
It's actually incredibly interesting. There's been multiple studies done on this, so I'm sure a quick Google search would be able to yield the evidence to support my argument here. But
Tom wins. That's what he's saying.
The same part of the brain that processes pain and pain is stored and reported to the brain is actually in the same place that pleasure is. So if you're thinking of something pleasurable, then it tends to overpower the feeling of pain, or at least reaches some sort of equilibrium. That's why I believe the flow state, when Matt brought up runners, for instance, they've reached to such a level of pain, but they're thinking about getting through and what it'll be like to relax and all these other things, that the pleasure of the moment in the future starts to suppress the feeling of pain. And there's ways and methods that can surely be researched in how to do this. In this particular book, it's all about breathing and thinking about positive energy, positive vibes, positive moments. and suppressing pain with the feelings and memories associated with pleasure. So that's a
Think of pleasure to get over the pain. So you're saying so it's such an
it's really
intense feeling of the pleasure?
it's really weird using the word pleasure, but it's the same part of the brain. And if you're actually thinking of pleasure, it shares that same space, right? Because
Yeah.
if you fully succumb to the pain and it is purely just pain, then of course you're only thinking of that pain, and thus the pain increases and its hurtfulness.
Yeah.
But if we're thinking,
Tom, I was gonna say that makes a lot of sense though. At least when I think about it, like just reflecting even on like my own life, like I didn't really quantify it as that. Like I just quantified it as him figuring out some way to not, have the pain affect him. But I think that that's an interesting insight as far as like the happiness piece. Because when I reflect on times when, I was like, maybe doing like a long plank or some hard workout or something like that, where I was like pushing through like physical pain, it was very much thinking about, all right, what I'm gonna cheeseburger after this. Oh, it's gonna be so nice. Like, I'm thinking of all these good things. And I feel like it would be great if they did tell people that. It's like if you're really feeling that, pain, it's like you could like gain something outside of just, a normal thought by trying to think of something specifically happy. So that hopefully it occupies a different section of the brain.
So yeah, just focusing so much. So maybe I guess kind of tying it all together. I mean, you focus so much on that pleasure and you try to process that to where maybe it's almost like that pleasure is more real to you than the pain, that it almost becomes more real to you than the pain.
yeah, it's not some I think metaphysical argument. It's actually one that's purely based in biology, that you have pain and you have pleasure and they're the same part of the brain. So if you begin to compete with that pain is producing, that chemical that's letting you know that you're in pain, if you're actually producing pleasure hormones at the same time to compete with the pain, then that pain begins to be subsidized by the feelings of pleasure. And
Very
it hurts
interesting.
less. And it hurts less. To the
That's
point where
pretty
obviously
interesting.
where martial arts masters have figured out a way to completely overcome pain with breathing and techniques and thought and a true mastery of their mind.
So let's I think maybe we should just come and kind of say this. I mean, what do we think? Because a lot of the things he's saying in here, it sounds, especially with this Kime, with Mushin, with this right, overcoming pain, overcoming distractions. It kind of sounds like maybe he's given us like kind of an out, like a freebie, like hey, just do this simple thing and you'll be able to overcome it. I mean, do we believe that really it's as simple as just focus on one thing for long enough, you'll get it? Think about pain so much for so long or excuse me, not pain. Think about pleasure and something happy for, enough focus and your pain just magically going to go away. I mean, do we believe that anything he's saying here is really saying that there is an easy out and just following these techniques? What are we thinking?
I don't think that I mean, if the techniques are easy, then yes. But I don't think the techniques are easy. But um, I mean, I don't know. It's all about how you're thinking about it. I think, yeah, if you just follow this exact framework, you'd probably live a much happier life. You'd accomplish more, like all good things. But to even accomplish all these things and to keep them all going at once is an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, that's true, to try to incorporate everything into your life. But honestly, and Tom, don't hate me for bringing this up, but I think it applies to so much now that you mentioned it. If you got a fire, man, you got to be prepared for it. You got to be prepared for it. So, in terms of this pain, I mean, personally, I brought up that idea, and my personal answer to it was that no, there is no simple out, right? Cedric, you mentioned it. If the technique were easy, everyone would be doing it. No one would be feeling pain. But you got to put in the time and the effort into getting away from this, into focusing so much on accepting the pain. As Cedric, you said earlier, accepting the pain has to be a part of it. You have to accept that we all want just happiness, right? That's all people want. Again, the contentment that we were talking about. But as we described earlier, you can't get to contentment without getting uncomfortable first, without having a little bit of pain. So you have to accept that pain is a thing, and you have to spend so much time, or enough time, actually. You have to spend enough time disciplining yourself to accept it and to work through it. As Cedric, you were saying, when you did your football drills and workouts, that you're able to easier focus on some of the pleasurable things, on maybe, oh, you know what, I think I'm going to get a hamburger after this, and you know what, it's easier for me to focus on that than to focus on the pain, because I've spent so much time going through this pain that I've accepted it, and really it just makes more sense to focus on the hamburger.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
I don't know. I think sometimes it's almost good to embrace the pain and like live in it.
Yeah, embrace it.
I mean, at least from a workout sense, like there's something about that, like feeling like your throat burning, like you're pushing through, like you don't think you could push anymore, and then you get another one, and about like living in it. It's not like positive thinking. It's about like, oh, this is what it feels like. It's just alive.
Yeah, what's interesting? I think about this quite a bit. There again, that broken record. There are a lot of people that are anxious, that are stressed, depressed, especially the people that are depressed. And there are a lot of people that, unfortunately have ideas, I don't fit in, and, no one cares about me and all that. And it's so unfortunate, because they do fit in. People do care about them. And, people would be sad if anything happened. One of the important things that, no one, not too many people maybe consider, is that, I mean, pain, sadness, that's all an experience of life. How incredible is it that we're able to experience this, that we're able to experience anything in life? I mean, what are the percentages that you're even born, right? What do they say? It's a pretty small percentage that you're even born. Okay, so you're to beat those odds. And now you've been given this gift to live. Well, I mean, why not experience all of it, right? Because again, with time passing, you want to spend it well, etc. When it's gone, it's gone. Everyone has an expiration date. And once that date passes, just like time, it's gone, right? So why not experience everything you can in life, as long as it's productive and gives you some sort of contentment, while you can, right? And pain is most certainly a part of that. Pain is most certainly a part of it, just like workouts. Maybe there is such thing as a good pain too.
Well, some Marines like to say pain is weakness leaving the body. So
that's what Hunter says. Yeah. It's my buddy. Yeah.
I think Hunter got it from the Marines, but yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true, man. I mean, maybe they got something figured out.
All right, so the answer to this chapter is, for the most part, replace pain with pleasure, but also understand and work with pain, and know your limits of pain, because then you can push it forward and take on newer, larger, more complex challenges.
Yeah, what did he say? He said that once pain is conquered, the attitude towards conquest outside of pain changes entirely.
Do you want to repeat that one more time?
Once pain is conquered, the attitude towards conquest outside of pain changes entirely.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Comes from martial arts. Ladies and gentlemen, study martial arts. There's a lot more than just punching and hitting people. Believe it or not. Okay, I think this is a good time to bring up the last chapter. Effortless Effort. So I'll say this actually I kind of see this as a repeat of Mushin and of Instinctive Action. But I will go into what he was discussing about, when he was talking about this lesson. So, good martial artists should always be able to strike an opponent without them realizing what his intentions are, right? Because if your opponent knew what you were going to do all the time, you'd be pretty ineffectual martial artist. He said the way to do this is, again, you got to act without thinking. You got to react. You have to pretty much, because if you think, you're more likely to show your intentions than if you were to react and think subconsciously. So he talks about, he's working with Jim Lau, his Wing Chun master, and he was trying to hit his hand, and he couldn't until he kind of just gave up and said, it doesn't matter if I hit his hand. And then he hit his hand. Crazy enough. He stopped thinking about it, and he hit it. Then Jim said, okay, great. So, you're learning that, you need to fully relax. You need to stop caring to really do it. And Joe says, well, that's pretty counterintuitive. In order to be effective, I need to stop thinking that I need to be effective. So then he talks about, because Joe also played tennis, and he tried using it in tennis, and it worked in tennis because he was able to stop thinking about his swings and, stop thinking about how hard he's going to hit it. And he just ended up hitting it a lot better. He started playing better. So again, it goes back to that, Mushin, when it kicks into effect, when you're reacting more so than when you're thinking and overanalyzing things, you're a lot more effective. Did you guys get anything? What'd you guys get from this chapter?
I mean, basically what I got from it is that, again, it's a repeat. Basically, it's like when you're not thinking about it, then and you just kind of react, you can be good. But specifically, it makes me think of some action sports athletes. Like I've watched videos and dudes are talking about how they, specifically ski videos. Like guys will do like a, double cork Misty 1080 or something, and on like 120-foot jump. And I was watching a video and the guy was talking about how he gets prepped for the jump, and one of the things he said is when he's nervous, he takes off with his eyes closed. So he'll do the whole, basically, I mean, obviously he'll spot the landing, but and right as he's taking off, he closes his eyes and he just does it because, once you're in rotation and you just trust yourself, you're just going to stay in rotation. And when you need to spot the landing, you need to spot the landing. And you'll know that. And so
it's just crazy, right? I mean, in order to spot the landing, that's got to take a lot of focus and a lot of right timing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think spotting the landing is a little easier than people would think. For me,
I haven't prepared for the fire. I don't have a fire extinguisher, so.
Well, no, it's whatever. I was just worried. I feel like spotting landing is probably not the biggest issue. The biggest, I mean, it's hard, but I would say it's just to complete that number of rotations, being so high in the air with wind and all that kind of stuff, and staying oriented. Because I guess which makes spotting the landing hard. But once you can see where the landing is, But I guess spotting and landing would be really hard on that. Because basically a dub is just a double backflip. So it's like a double backflip with 3 rotations.
So what were you saying about the athletes? I mean, how are they doing? He
just would close. I've heard other stories. Watch dudes on mountain bikes and all this stuff, and they'll talk about how they'll close their eyes and they won't even think about it, they'll just do it, and just that trust or that leaning on just solely instinct. Causes them to actually be able to complete what they're trying to complete.
Yeah, trust on instinct. So, little bit of flow in there, a little bit of Mushin, a little bit of effortless effort. Let's be a little more efficient in their landings and their skills and their sports. Action adventure sports are huge for flow states, man. I mean, that's Stephen Kotler, the author of that book of Rise of Superman. He focused entirely on surfers, on skateboarders, on, mountain climbers, free basing. Dude.
What?
You remember he was talking about free basing, so free climbing and then base jumping.
Oh, okay.
So there are people that there was this, I forget the name of the guy, but there was a guy who was a free climber. Free climbing is when you're climbing without support from the ropes. And when you're climbing up sheer cliffs, you definitely don't want to fall. So, but the way that these guys do it is they're acting pretty much primarily on their instincts, right? That voice inside them saying, "Hey, put your hand here. Hey, put your foot here." And if they make one mistake, that's it. It's over, right? So those guys do it. So that's proof. That's proof enough that anyone can use instinct. It is because he climbed, I think, in Patagonia, there's some mountains, and this guy climbed to the top and he went down, and he had a little issues. Some snow fell and some rocks fell, and it cut his leg as he was trying to get down, and he passed out, and then he ended up having to crawl home. And he said, "You know what? There's got to be a way to where you can get down from a mountain a lot quicker." So he found base jumping, and he decided to free climb and then base jump from the free climb, which is incredibly dangerous. But he lived for quite a while doing all this stuff, and that just goes to show you that there's something to all this instinctual,
didn't he die
reactions.
didn't he die because he
Yeah, he kind of slammed into a wall.
I thought he was a dude that got arrested or some shit.
No, so he and another guy, they were base jumping off of Yosemite, and they said something like the wind wasn't right or something. One guy kind of veered off and he hit something, but this guy, he kind of crashed into the mountain. It was pretty tough for him. And the unfortunate thing is, before he had said something like, I understand, base jumping is such an incredibly dangerous sport. He said, "I've got a wife, I've got a kid, and I can't keep pushing myself to do all this." But you know what? The sport got him. So again, we'll talk about it, if we read more into flow states, but there is definitely a kind of a dark side to the flow states and the dopamine. Sometimes that feeling of ecstasy, of being able to react instead of think about things, how easy it is, those feel good chemicals that kind of flow into your brain. Sometimes it's so strong that we do things that are not beneficial for us and the people around us. Sometimes it's too dangerous. But it's an aside. Tom, did you have any ideas on this effort?
Yeah, I think culturally, it's incredibly cliche, but going with the flow, I think today has an equal number of going with the flow crowd. It's a positive energy for people that are not in any sort of flow, like go with the flow and kind of get in the stream. But then there's the other people that have kind of seen that going with the flow can sometimes lead to a waterfall, and they're saying like, no, get out of the flow. You don't want to be in the flow. So there's like anything else, there's a double-edged sword, and why the currents are gentle, go with the flow, but once things start, really hitting the fan or hitting some rocks, you should be really quite careful. A little bit more on the effort without, what's the exact word?
Effortless effort.
Effortless effort. So he brought up tennis, and it reminded me of this other book by the Yale School of Business Management. The faculty put together this book called Thinking Strategically. And within that book, there's an example of two tennis players, one being a pro, sorry, my headphones have just, one sec, okay. That there's two tennis players, and one's a novice, one's a pro, and the pro notices on the amateur that their backhand is weak. So what does the pro do? They constantly keep trying to get the ball to that backhand, to get to that weakness, to apply as much focus and effort onto that weakness as possible. So what should the novice do? The novice can't particularly do anything in this situation because he is a novice and he's playing against someone who's a pro who notices something like that. But what the novice does need to do is they need to improve their backhand to the point where there's an equilibrium of skill on both forehand and backhand. So the pro can no longer exploit that weakness of the novice. Which is incredibly important. So how does this tie into effortless effort? Well, it should appear, at least to your adversaries, that both your forehand and your backhand are effortless. You've put a ton of effort into that backhand. It's starting to pay off. The pro can no longer exploit your weakness because you've been working on it. You've extended your line, as we bring up another fantastic chapter from Joe. The idea of extending your line, in that you shouldn't cut others off but improve your own skill to outmatch them and outwit them, instead of cutting them down and trying to cut the lines in halves, but to grow past them. So it's the idea that the effortless effort, and it reminds me also of another word, came from the Italian Renaissance, sprezzatura, the idea of effortless effort. You've put so much ridiculously amount of effort that your arguments, that your rhetorical arguments, your advice, your pomp, your style, it all appears effortless. Like,
Yep.
the perfect caricature of an effortless, I keep getting effortless and effort mixed up in my effortless effort. The perfect caricature of this model is James Bond, right? Everything he does is effortless. He can dance, he can shoot, he is a playboy extraordinaire, he knows how to play cards, just everything. But in order to get to that level, takes a lot of effort. And the suave and the confidence that comes from putting all that effort into being skillful in all those different traits, it'll appear to everyone as effortless, and it'll almost seem mystical and or magical. Your aura will precede you, because no one has seen you put in the sweat equity into your skills, into your knowledge, into your expertise. They're only going to see the polished product at the end of the day, and they will be stunned. You will look effortless. You'll have the sprezzatura, as the Italians used to say, and your enemies can no longer exploit your weaknesses, because it will appear that you have none.
Yeah. So to make it sound, I guess another way to put it, which I think Cedric will really appreciate. Cedric has said this to me multiple times. I'm learning the piano right now, and he said, "Hey, do this, and it's going to become a lot easier." I mean, another word for effort is time. I mean, just put time into it, right? Going back to that 10,000 hours, just put more time. The closer you get to 10,000 hours, the more likely you've done the right things to learn the skill correctly. But you have to put in the time, right? So along with effort and along with how effective you're doing it, you got to put in a lot of time. You got to find the time. If it really matters to you, put it in, and the effort will definitely make it a lot easier to get rid of that little hitch in the backstroke. And it'll make things seem a lot more effortless.
Yeah, I think it's focused intensity, focused effort. I think broadly, just learning multiple things in and of itself is good. But I feel like if we're not learning as much about a field or a particular a set or amount of knowledge as much as possible, then we feel sometimes very helpless because things aren't connecting as they should. Like I like to think, back in middle school and high school, why did we not come out as amazing? Because we've spent all this time learning about English, then we transition out for an hour and learn all about math. And it's important from a particular point of view to learn all these things, but how much are you really learning in that 1 hour? And are you actually developing your skills necessary to become specialized and become knowledgeable and become expert in that particular trade or field? And the argument for sure is, middle school, high school, you're learning, you're getting a broad sense of what you like and what you don't like, which is super helpful. But I think grading ultimately on this issue is a cultural concern that I would like to address in the future.
So the argument for that, for why they don't come out as successful, is because there's such a limited span of time that these kids spend on each subject, right? You said an hour for each. The whole key to the 10,000 hours is that you need to spend 10,000 hours equates to almost 10 years of multiple hours a day. right? And outliers, the author discusses when studying a lot of musicians, that the ones that were truly successful were the ones that slowly increased the amount of hours they put in during each day during the week, um, to become successful. And he said that there was no difference between those born with an innate talent and those that didn't, because either way, if you put in around 10,000 hours, they found that, I mean, you were a master in what you set out to do. So the problem with a lot of the schooling is that, again, if it's only an hour or an hour and a half, whatever it may be, and you're not spending as much time on it, then it's a lot harder to learn. Another important thing that you brought up too is you need to want to do it. If you don't want to do it and you're not putting a lot of effort into it and you're not trying to learn the information, then I mean it's gonna stick a lot less than if you wanted it to.
Well,
I think it's got to be a melding. It's got to be a melding. It's the time and it's how much you want to learn it. And then another thing that Outliers brings up, and I know you were going to say something, so I'll finish up here and then let you go. But another thing that it brings up is, unsuccessful people of these masters, they were fortunate enough to have been afforded that time. Not everyone is afforded the time. Some people are in college and they have to work 3 jobs just to pay for it. Probably now, I don't even know if that's possible, the expenses of college, but depending on which college you're going to. But, so say someone who's got their college paid for, maybe retaining a lot more because they have a lot more time to focus on studying the material than someone who's working 4 jobs and can only really study an hour or 2 a day outside of their classes.
well, let's look at it this way, because I was just trying to break it down mathematically in my mind. Let's say you're studying math and you're a freshman in high school or college, and let's say you're starting with 101. Let's say you have class 2 times a week in a standard 15-week semester. That means you're doing 30 hours worth of math a semester over 15 weeks. Just 30 hours, not including homework. This is just in-class learning. Now the educational system likes to put on homework and a few other additional hours. I'm just using this as an example just to show how minuscule it is. But that is 30 hours a semester. Now we have 2 semesters in an academic year, so that's 60 hours. 60 times 4 years is going to be 240 hours. 240 hours to learn as much as you can about math. And that 240 hours and the quality that you put into that 240 hours is going to determine what school you're going to get into, whether you're going to go to Harvard, MIT, or Yale, or you're going to go to community college. And it's just mind-blowing to think that that is the amount of effort that our education system puts in to developing the expertise and the knowledge and skill base that a student actually needs to survive and grow in a ecosystem and culture like ours today.
So yeah, a lot more time to attend.
Nowhere close. Nowhere close. Not even 1%.
Before I comment on it, Cedric, do you have any thoughts? You've been kind of sitting there and kind of mulling over. I've been seeing. You have any thoughts on some of this information, some of our conversation?
Oh, man, no. Tom, what were you just saying?
I was just talking about the minuscule amount of hours our education system has.
Yeah. Sorry, I drifted away. But yeah, so minuscule amount of hours. Back, I guess, Outliers we've referenced this a lot, but I mean, I guess that's what we're talking about. But I mean, then you look at like the Japanese schools; they were in school substantially less. I mean, essentially more. Sorry,
More.
Each day even
Less vacation time in the summer, right?
Yep. Yeah. So more days, more hours spent actually doing it. But what I think about, kind of the difference in culture for Americans, we're trying to give that kid the choice, because I would say. Just like it said, like when it was talking about innate talent, like some of the kids that made into those top classes were terrible at math, but they didn't want to be. So They busted their ass. They worked way harder than anybody else did outside of school, doing whatever they could to get better at it. And eventually they got good. And then they were in those top classes and did it, but they didn't have the innate ability. And there's plenty of other kids who was the complete opposite, where they had all the innate ability, but they were so lazy that they didn't want to do anything or put in any effort. So they actually started regressing. And even with that innate ability, they couldn't overcome their own, lack of effort.
Yeah.
Lack of drive,
So
lack of hours.
that's very promising for anyone listening. You want to accomplish anything, man? Okay. First of all, I would say, another thing they talk about in Outliers, you have to have a sense for it. It's got to be something that you are good at and you can build upon. But say you have no musical talent at all and you really want to learn the piano. I mentioned the piano earlier. If you put in all that time, just as Cedric said, just as this guy who wrote the book said, put in all that time, man, there's going to be nothing separating you from someone with innate talent, because it quite literally comes down to how much time you're putting into it, right? Because the effort comes through all the time. You have to put in effort to put in all the time. It's a lot of discipline, a lot of effort to stay consistent on it. So, I mean, that is incredibly promising for anyone. If you want to accomplish anything, you can. Don't let anyone ever tell you can't. All you have to do is find the time, put in the time. But you have to be the one that makes you do it. No one else can make you do it. You have to be disciplined enough. You have to keep on top of yourself. Find the drive, follow that drive, get it accomplished. You can do it.
Golf clap.
Okay.
Love you, Matt.
You guys have any parting thoughts on this chapter, on the ones we discussed today?
A big part of it is time, but I think focused time will get you to your goals quicker than you realize. Just phoning it in, just because you're phoning it in, doesn't mean that magically after 10,000 hours you're going to be any better. It needs to be focused. It needs to be precise.
I disagree with that, actually, because it quite literally is 10,000 hours.
It's an observation, not a fact.
It says there's a specific caveat. If you look in the book, he says 10,000 hours of specific practice. So just spending 10,000 hours as a cashier does not make you the best cashier in the world.
Correct.
Well, you pick up. Okay.
Well,
only if
you're
trying
like
to.
just think of all the
one.
Okay. Matt,
I stopped. I was letting you speak.
I was gonna let you speak.
Okay. What I was going to give you is that what Stephen Kotler says, what Jamie Wheel says about that 10,000 hours, because like I said, he brings it up in Rise of Superman. He says if you're in a flow state, which flow state, if you want to change this word flow state, which sounds like some kind of magical term, if you want to separate that with just intense focus and efficiency, right, which is essentially what it is. Flow state is just intense focus, efficiency, to where things are a lot easier for you because you focus so much and you're a lot more efficient in doing things. You cut that 10,000 hours into 5,000 hours. So, to your point, Tom, that is exactly correct.
Thank you. I'm going to leave on that note.
But all right.
I just want to be validated, Matt.
Good. Well, everyone
That's
does.
here.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I appreciate you bringing this up. One last thing to kind of leave everyone on is everyone wants to be validated, right? Everyone wants to be understood. I think an important part of improving the culture is make the effort to understand people. The next book we're going to read, I guess we're going to kind of break the silence now. We're planning on reading Never Split the Difference. It's a book on negotiation by Chris Voss, who's the head FBI investigator for however many years.
Hostage negotiator, not investigator.
Hostage negotiator, yes, exactly. And his method is pretty incredible because it's all about empathizing with the other person. And the incredible thing about that is when you empathize with someone, you actually understand where they're coming from, right? And what he says is it's like 20% of 30% of the battle. He may have even said 60% of the battle. We're going to have to read the book to find out. But you put in that effort, people are more willing to listen to you because people ultimately just want to be understood. People want other people to know where they're coming from because we are all scared. right? We live in this world. We act like we own it. We act like we control everything, but we don't, right? The only reason why it's our world is because we're born here, right? We're all constantly learning. We all constantly run into something we don't know that we have to overcome, right? As Tom said, you got to climb that mountain to gain that knowledge. You look back and suddenly things are a lot easier for you.
Beautiful.
So if you make the effort to understand people, and you can do so by empathizing with them and trying to see where they're coming from, people will be a little bit happier. I think maybe the culture and our world will be a happier place.
Exactly. That was my thought exactly.
Yep. All right. So anyway, we're going to read about, I think, 7 to 8 chapters. We're going to finish up the book next time. We're going to discuss, moving on from there, we may do a final overview of the book, or we may move on to the next one. I think we're going to have to discuss as noted. But appreciate you guys watching this, and guess we'll see you on Sunday.
Thank
You guys
you.
have any last parting thoughts?
All good, Matt.
Oh,
Good.
no. One.
Oh,
Remember, subscribe to the like button.
Subscribe to the like button.
Thank you,
I forgot
Colter.
that. Freaking dumb. Subscribe to the like button.
we lost one viewer before we got that down.
Damn it.
Should have said subscribe to the viewer before saying.
I was too effective in my ending.
Me
I
too.
should have known. Okay. All right. Tom.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all again. Subscribe to the like
Thank
button
you.
and comment button and notification